Welcome and thanks for joining me for the Gut Health Turnaround Series 2.0, 21 Ways to Heal Your Gut, Reclaim Your Energy, and Look and Feel Amazing. My name is Leah, Kline, Health and Wholeness Coach, and I will be your host. Today I'm being joined by Dr. Gracie Liu, or Grace Liu, whichever.
Oh, either way, I answered it.
Okay.
Both.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor.
All right, and she's going to be talking about how to combat gut dysbiosis in order to combat body fat, bloat, and brain fog. Most of us can use that information. All right, as background, let me give you some more information on her before we get into the questions. Dr. Gracie Liu, PharmD, is a trained functional medicine practitioner and the founder of the Gut Institute. She is a clinical pharmacist with a doctorate in practice for 19 plus years and specializes in complex disease management. Dr. Liu de Pharma consults and helps clients gain optimal performance while rebuilding the microbiome after damage from modern living. She uses nutrigenomic tools and other advanced functional lab testing. Currently, she is training some functional medicine leaders to approach gut protocols with her expertise. Clients include paleo movement leaders and a UFC MMA fighter in the top 10. She has been invited to speak at the Ancestral Health Symposium 2016, 14, and 11, and Paleo Convention Berlin, Paleo FX for 2 years in a row, and interviewed for the documentary by Microbirth Producers and Women's Health UK magazine on the skin gut microbiome. Recently, she shared the stage with Dr. David Perlmutter. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble saying this.
Yeah. Perlmutter, yeah.
Perlmutter, author of Grain Brain, on the expert microbiome panel at the Paleo FX 16 in Austin, Texas. Dr. Grace has also been interviewed for the Keto Summit, Detox Summit, Supercharging Your Gut Summit, live panel with Dr. Lapine, October 12th. That just happened recently.
Yeah, just last week, yeah.
Yeah. Rob Wolf podcast, Optimal Terrain with Dr. Nasha Winters. Sigma Nutrition, Endurance Planet, Bulletproof Radio with Dave Asprey. She is currently finishing a book on the topic, The Amazing Gut, The Magic and Madness of the Microbiome. Great title. With scheduled pre-sales in October 2016. Yeah. The Gut Institute will be hosting microbiome medicine live training on December 10th and 11th, 2016 in Oakland, California. Dr. Grace is co-teaching with 2 other doctorate-trained functional pharmacists. And let's go ahead and get into our content for today. And wanted to start out with, how did you first get into nutrition?
I actually was in college and I found out I really didn't like the field I was in. I was in engineering at the time at UC Berkeley, and I decided to go into my love, which was food. I just loved food. So I decided to go into food science and nutritional science. And I found it was like the best path for me. Even though I went to pharmacy school later and got my doctorate in pharmacy, I found that a lot of drugs just actually didn't really work. And, looking at food studies or dietary studies and observational studies, whether they're prospective or past, the studies would just be amazing in how effective they would be, whether it was like fish oil or certain vitamins, in improving health. And whereas with medications, it'd be very lucky if it was like just a few percent over the placebo effect. Placebo effect was like 15, 20, 25%. And then it'd be so significant, statistically, if it was just a few percent over that. But that's not really a cure, right?
No.
Yeah. Recently in microbiome medicine, in microbiome science, when they study the bacteria in the stools. Fecal transplants have an enormous cure rate. And among my colleagues, this is just unheard of. They're just completely repulsed that poop, stool matter, may be more effective than any drug on the market currently. And it's really appalling that our drugs, like multiple courses of strong antibiotics, are creating certain diseases now. So we now have enough retrospective studies and observational studies showing like a huge link between the more antibiotics that a mom uses, prenatally or during the first or second or third trimester, or during the baby's first initial years, there's a high rate of obesity. Several studies show even a doubling in eczema, dermatitis condition. And there are big also links with autoimmune conditions like celiac, IBD. I actually had Hashimoto's. And there's big links between a lot of different autoimmune conditions and different use of antibiotics and then a subsequent condition. And when I work with my clients, a lot of people can tell me when they go back to their antecedent, what event might have occurred before their chronic condition, whether it was an eating disorder or IBS or inflammatory autoimmune bowel disease or acne. They recall like multiple rounds of antibiotics, and then one was just way too many, and it broke the camel's back, and then boom, they ended up with a condition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I kind of fell into,
Yeah. So what first got you started on gut health specifically?
Well, when I had developed Hashimoto's in college, I happened to get lucky and it recovered on its own. I got outside, got vitamin D, sunlight, and I happened to change the way I ate, more Chinese, more ancestral. Mm-hmm. A few years ago, I had a progestin IUD, antibiotics, and a dental implant. I'm not sure what caused exactly, but then I ended up with chronic fatigue for 2 years, and then I learned how to fix it. I left the field of pharmacy and I went straight into functional medicine and studied for a few years, did the AFM CP at the IFM, the Institute of Functional Medicine. I highly recommend it. It's an awesome program. And I had to actually learn how to fix my own health because I used a lot of the IFM protocols. They didn't really work. I used SIBO protocols. They worked initially, and then I had horrible results after. Like, things just didn't seem to get better. So I had to develop a lot of my own protocols. And I think I'm ideally suited because I'm a pharmacist and I look at things, kind of from a mechanistic point of view for health. And I found that some of the SIBO protocols that we have on the market are just so strong. They're almost like our pharmaceuticals. They wipe out. When I look at testing, I can see a dramatic reduction in diversity, dramatic reductions in what I call the ABCs. These are the guardians of the gut. And if we lose the ABCs, we can get disease. There are numerous microbiome studies now that show the lack of the ABC strains is highly associated with disease. And in animal models, they can replenish these ABC strains and health reverses and disease reverses and health gets recovered. People can reclaim vitality, reclaim the energy. And in animal models, they get thinner, leaner, faster. And what I see in my clients, when we rebuild the microbiome based on ancestral templates, and bringing the ABCs back in and removing certain parasites or pathogens, health totally recovers. I see autoimmune antibodies go down in only a month or two, or even normalize. I have a case that normalized in a month. IBD pain, goes away within just 2 to 4 weeks. People with cystic acne after 3, I work in 3 phases. The first phase is very full of nourishment, and then we work on pathogens and parasites and, different co-infections. And then the third is rebuilding all of it using different prebiotics, fiber, to rebuild the specific strains, the ABCs that someone may be missing. And in doing that, people, even if they eat gluten and dairy, no return of acne problems, no return of joint pain, no return of brain fog. And they're very, very happy with this. And what people tell me is they're just so tired of trying to look for solutions on Dr. Google. It just doesn't work. Or going through 3 or 4 or 5 different, practitioners. They get really frustrated. Everyone does the same thing. They go low FODMAP or paleo or AIP, autoimmune paleo. And they may work temporarily, but they don't solve the root problem. And the root problem is that they're missing the ABC strains.
Okay. So could you go into a little bit more about the ABC strains?
Yeah. So we have so many wonderful studies that come from either Europe or UK. They look at the 16S rRNA. In technology terms, those are the ways the technology looks at bacteria in the gut. And they look at healthy controls. And there's hundreds of studies where disease states are looked at, and then there's always a healthy control arm. So when I looked at different studies, when we look at the healthy controls or centenarians, people who live long or strong, healthy athletes that are disease-free, all of them have the ABC strains. So I don't want to like overwhelm the listeners, but A is for Akkermansia. So, just you don't have to remember this too long, but Akkermansia is actually in almost every animal on Earth. It's in fish, that dwell, a mile below, sea level. They're in boa constrictors, snakes, birds, and all mammals. And healthy animals and, fish and animals and lizards, we will have between 3 to 5% of healthy Akkermansia in the gut microbiome for bacteria. And same with healthy humans and centenarians and people who are disease-free. Yeah. So A stands for Akkermansia. And then B stands for Bifidobacteria longum specifically. In the Western world, we're missing bifidolongum in nearly everyone. I was at a talk recently, and a researcher from UC Davis, Megan Sanctuary, was talking about breast milk and how the bifidos are almost extinct in healthy moms' breast milk. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Europe and European studies, there's plenty of bifidos, plenty of bifidolongum, and it's highly associated with insulin sensitivity, leanness, longevity, cancer-free states, and no autoimmune condition or IBD or IBS. So bifidolongum is the B. There's another B also, Bacteroides, but we don't have to talk too deeply about that one. But there's 2 Bs actually. And then for C, it stands for Christiansinella. And there's actually 2 Cs, Christiansinella and Clostridioides. And both of these groups are so important in animal models. If they give them as a probiotic strain, animals lose weight, they get protected from high-fat diets or gut damage actually. And we have no probiotic per se yet, but these are very easy to bring back and resurrect with certain fibers and foods that are rich in oligosaccharides like lentils, beans, and resistant starch 3, like cooked rice, cooked whole grains. I kind of prefer the gluten-free just because we have so much problems with gluten right now. But eventually, when people work with me, they can eat gluten when they want to because these strains break down gluten. All the ABCs, many of them actually have the enzyme systems, the cutters that break down gluten, gliadin, mycotoxins, different things that we normally would encounter in food. And they're not necessarily bad for us, but if we don't have the right strains that we can outsource to break them down, then they become problematic.
Mm. So do you have any, theories for why we are so deficient in those ones versus what's going on in Europe?
Martin Glazier is an ID doctor, infectious disease doctor in New York. He wrote an amazing book called Missing Microbes. He's been interviewed in countless places and podcasts. I recommend everyone to listen to his material and read his interviews and articles. He's amazing. He believes antibiotics are really one of the biggest culprits in the modern world. By age 18, I think the average course of antibiotics is 17 courses of antibiotics by the age of 18 in the US. And Europe has not been that like us, but they're gradually going there too. And certainly China and South America, where Zika virus is a problem, they have high overutilization of antibiotics. So they're quickly becoming, really, fat, foggy, and sick like we are here in the Western world, and cancerous.
Yeah. So we're spreading it to everybody else, right?
Yeah. It's not just the McDonald's, but the combination of a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, multiple aspects. That is makes sense. Of course, so much of things are being disrupted by the antibiotics, and people don't have a proper understanding of what that is and what it is doing to their body when they're taking it. If you could, just go into that a little bit for those that are less knowledgeable and our listeners.
I think antibiotics are per se bad. We have moved from, a great hygiene, state where we don't have mass problems with, like, let's say malaria or cholera and really big, high population density kind of problems. We have first world problems, not the third world problems, because we have antibiotics. They treat TB, they treat pneumonia, people live, they don't die from asthma now. We have many great technology that has saved our life, really has. It's just the balance, as a pharmacist, I think if an antibiotic is absolutely necessary, choosing the most narrow spectrum is great. And then having a probiotic on hand. Several studies show just having a probiotic on hand, you want to space it away from the actual antibiotic that is killing, like by 2 hours. That can protect the native flora. So the damage is much, much less. Yeah. And it depends on the person and the threshold and genetics and what their fiber intake is. Some people can recover a lot of strains after antibiotics, but several studies show that none of the strains come back. And you can't resurrect what's not there. Even with fiber, like some people come to me and they're on perfect high fiber paleo diets, let's say, or WAF diet or AIP diet, and their guts are completely decimated. All the ABCs are gone, and they're like 10-fold, 20-fold higher pathogens in their gut. Mm. Yeah, and the diet may temporarily, solve some of their problems, but as soon as they lick a strawberry, or eat a bite of cake, gluten-free cake even, all the symptoms come back because many of the pathogens we have, they've adapted to eating sugar. They love sugar. Whereas if you give fiber, you can kind of lower these numbers down. They don't like fiber and they'll die off. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not sustainable to avoid sugar. Sugar's not really bad for us, and we eat, all our foods have sugar in it. When we break them down completely in the gut, they become a simple monosaccharide or disaccharide. And if we have plenty of bifido around, specifically bifidolongum, there's actually something called the bifido shot. It helps us to magnify the ability to upregulate the simple carbs, simple sugars like monosaccharides and disaccharides. And then our bacteria make them into magic. They become food actually for other bacteria, or they're transformed into really magical chemicals that protect the body, protect the cell lining, the mucosal lining, and also chemicals that actually make us lean, are anti-inflammatory, and protect us from cancer. But when we don't have the bifidolongum, we don't have that ability to metabolize simple sugars, and the sugars like fly around, right? They go through the portal vein, they go from our gut straight to the liver, they clog the liver, they make the liver very fatty. And then people become pre-diabetic, they have metabolic syndrome, they have difficulty burning body fat, and they have problems sleeping often, and then they're in a cancerous, precancerous state. And then immunity is in the gut. 80% of our immunity is in the gut. And so it's no wonder so many people are more susceptible for other co-infections, whether it's Lyme or cytomegalovirus or Epstein-Barr or herpes family viruses. There's a number of, different viruses that we get exposed to all the time. But if our gates are in immunity, if our gates are closed, we have a great immune system in our gut, we can stave off anything. Many people can be exposed to Giardia, let's say, but only a small number of them actually develop Giardia or become a carrier because they don't have the good flora, the ABCs typically, to fight it off.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you, you mentioned some of the things you try to, build with like fiber and things like that. How do you encourage or replace, some of these things that are missing?
Yeah. So the way I kind of reckon it is, it's kind of like a hotel. What's your favorite hotel, Leah?
Home most of the time.
Okay, not a youth hostel or well, like if you go somewhere like to Europe or Hawaii.
When I was in New Zealand, I was staying at hostels.
Oh, that's awesome. Perfect. Okay, let's say your perfect, nice hostel. You would describe it, right? Be warm, friendly, right? Clean, right? And to maintain that, there's staff that do that, right? Even if it's a minimal staff, there's some staff that take care of that, right? There's housekeeping or, the main managerial staff, right? So in our gut, the ABCs are like that. They perform the duty of the housekeepers or the concierge, and they direct and manage other staff that keep everything orderly and clean and kind of keep the riffraff off. I'm not saying like homeless are bad or riffraff are bad, but when there's too many, right, or too many party animals in the hotel or hostel, then it gets a little unruly. Yeah. And the normal residents can't really get in or, enjoy the space there for all the other amenities, right? So what I do is I'm kind of like the concierge and one of the housekeeping staff. We kind of gently clean things up and then keep them clean, like at a routine basis. And I use very gentle botanicals to do that. I don't use like high-dose oregano or berberine at all, hardly ever, because I've just seen, people come to me, they already have resistance to it usually, and they create an environment that's very highly selected for pathogens actually in the gut using a high dose. So using multiple agents at low doses has been really, really fruitful. And then trying to, manage all the co-infections. So like if a, hostel or hotel gets overridden, usually there's like all the different kinds of things in there, not just one group, let's say of like, let's say soccer hooligans, let's say, but, maybe a little homeless, and then you have a little riffraff or some like, party animal, like, so let's say you have to kind of selectively kind of move them all out, but there's a different strategy for each one to kind of escort them out. Some you may need to hire security staff, right?
Yeah.
Take them back out beyond the velvet gate, right? Or, you need heavier hitting. I mean, if there's something really stuck there, let's say like a terrorist, you need the SWAT team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So depending on what the co-infection is or what's suspected, there's different strategies to kind of bring them out, because we can introduce and try to repopulate as much as we can with very, very expensive probiotics, but they won't get in. When I work with people, I found they just would not stay. They wouldn't anchor because the whole mucosal lining is kind of overbooked. So we can kind of free them up. And the second we free it up, we want to have good probiotics around, because as a niche opens, all the wily little pathogens, they'll move in faster than you could say, because that's what their primordial DNA teaches them to.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to lower the inflammation in the gut with, I look at nutrigenomics. That's really the best way, because everyone's really different. Not everyone gets ill. Like not everyone would get chronic fatigue like me, having the factors that I had, but it's my genetics and what was going on with me and my level of toxins at the time. So I look at nutrigenomics because it's much faster to get healing by bypassing certain things in the gut and lowering inflammation and feeding certain pathways. Certain pathways can get really depleted, if we don't have enough zinc or certain B vitamins. And I don't overuse certain B vitamins because of nutrigenomics, because they also will clog up pathways when you use the wrong B vitamin, and it overmethylates and creates a lot of agitation or inflammation for people. So when I work with people, we have 3 phases, and it's critical that to do testing. There's no way to know what's going on in the black box of our gut unless we have a little bit of testing, to assess what's going on. Otherwise, we're kind of shooting in the dark.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that certainly makes sense. You mentioned earlier in passing that the gut issues can be a setup for multiple issues, and specifically Lyme disease. I know I've talked with some people that have, serious, Lyme issues that just can't seem to get rid of it. And is that, something where a lot of it really needs to start with healing the gut?
I think Lyme is so complicated right now. But the gut is critical for almost every chronic condition that we face now in the modern world, I believe, whether it's cancer, preventing cancer, secondary prevention, heart disease, or chronic co-infection like Lyme disease. I've seen some cases, I don't treat Lyme myself, but I've seen cases that have come to me, and usually it's not just Lyme that is the issue, because if immunity is so low that someone contracts Lyme, usually there's other things going on as well, other viral infections or even mycobacterium, and fungal infections, fungal overgrowths, and some other things that may be compromising immunity. It could be a mold toxicity issue, their environment, or even internally, a lot of negative thoughts and mood and low adrenal function, low adrenal or thyroid function. Yeah. So all these things affect immunity. And when I work with someone, we try to rebuild and nourish all of them. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, immunity can't do what it's supposed to do, which is to, relieve the burden of spirochetes and bacterial overload or viral overload, or, everything else that goes along with that. Yeah. So there are a lot of great immune enhancing botanicals, which happen to have antiviral activity, antifungal activity, and probably as well, anti-Lyme activity, without having to use 3 or 4 or 5, really potent antibiotics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So
yeah, I wonder how much is the treatment of Lyme really, and not, the initial gut problem. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's true. The it's kind of like if you're just going after the Lyme, is this really the root cause, or is this something that's developed because of one of the other issues? And, like the gut, or, any of the other things. So yeah, you have to look at the whole body and what's going on everywhere.
Yeah. I tend to work with people who've already had the Borrelia treatment, and we're rebuilding the gut. And what I've seen is that, like, the younger the person, much better results. They come back really fast. I try not to overtreat because they've already had so many antibiotics, and that's like usually why they have like aches and brain fog or severe bloating. And when we gently, introduce, we weed a little bit and then introduce lots of really good flora, they have really wonderful results, really wonderful. And I have a probiotic. It has the B. It doesn't have the A and C, but it has the B in it. And I created it to mimic what people lose after antibiotics and what they should have gotten from mom. But if mom was sick or they had a lot of antibiotics, they wouldn't necessarily sustain it, or they lose it along the way. So we found just game-changing results with it. People just, even if they don't do anything else, they start noticing weight loss. Some people have reported to me 7 to 10 pound weight loss within just the first month. Brain fog can improve. Some people get die-off. It's so potent. If you have a co-infection like fungal overgrowth or viral overgrowth, there can be die-off because it's so effective in improving the gut lining and the mucosal lining and immunity, and the bacteria themselves have activity that they can start feeling, the typical die-off Herxheimer symptoms like achy, tired. So I usually just have them back off or, resume at a lower dose. Like, it comes in 2 scoopers that come with it. Like, there's a baby dose, and then they can kind of gradually go up to the adult dose. Yeah. And it breaks down oxalates. And what our flora do, several strains in there break down oxalates. So with fungal overgrowth and other co-infections like Borrelia or other ones, there can be an excessive amount of oxalates in the body. That's why so many people do well on a low oxalate diet. It's not really sustainable, it's not really perfect long-term, but they get temporary relief because our bacteria and our yeast, when they are unbalanced and dysbiotic, they make a lot of toxins. It's like a nuclear power plant, like blah, like all this, we can be being poisoned from the inside out. And when I had chronic fatigue, that's what it felt like. Mm-hmm. And that's what studies show. There are lots of cresols and hippurate and and other chemicals that indicate that there's overgrowth of bacteria and yeast. And what they're doing is they're just pumping out tons of aldehydes. Aldehyde's a lot like formaldehyde. It fixes proteins, keeps them from folding right. So then all our enzymes and our proteins don't work right. They're all crunched up and not working appropriately. So of course it's impossible for people to feel fertile, fat-free, lean, sharp and on the ball with cognition. So when I work with people, I work with executives, endurance athletes, a couple MMA players and fighters, and multitasking moms. When they work with me, they immediately start feeling better in just 2 to 4 weeks because we address the root problem, no matter what the co-infection may be, and really nourish what's missing. With so many like subclinical infections going on, people feel really tired because their bodies just pooped. And they're clogged full of these like crystallizations of oxalates and other problems, and all the bacterial and yeast, like their little toxins clog many things up, so things just don't work right. So we gently try to open things, and because bacteria and yeast are so wily, they can translocate to all over the body, into lymph systems, lymph nodes in different places, all over the body, and these need to be kind of cracked open a bit. And it takes really special botanicals sometimes to kind of crack them. But it's really rewarding. People feel so much better in just a short period of time. And then instead of losing good bacteria, they're regaining a lot. To me, I look at it like a financial portfolio. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a little Lyme. Okay, well, someone's going to deal with that, right? Or if they have a little, CMV or Epstein-Barr, or fungal infection overgrowth, they're part of the portfolio and they're offsetting the profit, right? Yeah. They're taking away the assets. So we, just move things around a little bit and make sure we invest well. We put in lots of good assets, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, good, long-term investments. And it pays off. People see the antibodies go down, their immunity pops back up, they start feeling strong, resilient, robust. That's the key. And I follow and track testing. We can redo like comprehensive stool diagnostic test, or I really like the GIFX from Genova Labs. They have a qPCR, a quantified amount of what the ABCs are, and 24 different strains. And you can see them line up, and they always improve with each test. Like we repeat it every 6 to 10 weeks. And we look at urine markers as well. Urine markers are one of the best testing we have right now that can look at what is spewing out of the gut. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, people can tell me, like, if they have brain fog or they can't burn the body fat, or they have a lot of fatigue. We already know they have a lot of things spewing out. But with the urine testing, we can also see adrenal function. Are they still really all fried? High cortisol or cortisol dysregulation, high adrenaline, and no calm, no feeling of happiness, because the serotonin will be low. The dopamine will be all fried, either high or super low, right? Or the adrenaline precursors will be super depleted, right? Or turning over really too rapidly, too fast for the body to make up for it. Yeah, and a lot of these correlate with nutrigenomics. We have a lot of different mutations that match up with why we are more prone to having higher adrenaline. For those people, they might be more Vikings because they get turned on by, excitement and conflict. They can go. Yeah, exactly. The type A, and these people tend to get sick in a different way, And I also look at one mutation called FUT2, which is a joking way you could call it, because it's really FU, because people don't make as much fiber on the mucosal lining. Mm. And this makes them very, very prone for all the co-infections, whether it's Lyme, whether it's viral co-infections, fungal overgrowths, because the body can't track the ABCs. Mm-hmm. So it allows more of the hooligans to come into hotel and hostel and stay there. Mm-hmm. So we work with that to make sure we can gently move them out and nourish, really, really nourish. Yeah. And with FUT2, there's a lower B12 level. So we use a lot of liposomal B12, and people almost immediately within 2 to 4 weeks, just using liposomal B12, their dreams come back. Sleep becomes super deep. They get more energy in the morning because we need B12. It's very nourishing for our nervous system and for immunity, to fight any kind of infection and to keep them away forever.
All right. So what's something that our listeners could do today that would help heal their bodies?
Just by listening, I appreciate so many listeners tuning in for your wonderful, gut health turnaround 2.0, because they're skilling up in an amazing way. I think all the speakers lined up are amazing to learn really great tips. I believe in bugs over drugs, even though I'm a pharmacist. I think bugs are bacteria. They do amazing things for us. They are the factory for happiness, magic, and all the alchemy that happens in our gut, and we want good ones. So probiotics are really ideal, like something like our brand, which is the Ultra Bifidomaximus. And we sell actually other probiotics that really symbiotically, synergistically work really well with the Ultra Bifidomaximus as well. And they're on my website, thegutinstitute.com. So those are really great, I think. Almost everyone notices improvements when they start them.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell people what your free gift is?
Oh, our free gift is a ebook, and it explains more in detail what the ABCs are, how to track them on different testing, and what their roles are, and then also the pathogens that we want to kind of minimize. In the Western world, we have a much greater load because we're missing the ABCs. But with just testing and using the right kind of fiber and using the right kind of probiotics, we can easily, lower those pathogens and see much, much great health turnaround and protection against cancer and cardiovascular disease.
All right. So, and that's at your website?
And that's at our website. Mm-hmm. We have a page, to access that for all the viewers.
All right. Yeah. And we will have also links for everything. Will be on the speaker page as well, but just covering both bases in case you're too lazy to go over to the speaker page and find the links.
Absolutely.
Covering at multiple locations. So anyway, so if somebody wants to connect with you, that is at that same website, correct?
Yeah, the same website under the contact, yeah. My practice actually, unfortunately, is currently closed, but we'll be reopening in January. And we have some clinician and coach training coming up in December in Berkeley, California. we'd like to invite any clinicians or coaches who are listening, if they're interested in learning about the protocols and for nutrigenomics and how to make their practice multiply, amplify, the profits that can open up, by treating, using cutting edge science and microbiome science.
All right. So thank you, Grace, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Leah.
All right, and thanks to everyone for listening. Come back tomorrow for more of the Gut Health Turnaround series.